Alright, well, if you missed it just a little bit earlier on in the week, ArenaNet did reveal, in conjunction with a 50% off sale for Heart of Thorns, that they are releasing episode 3 of The Living World on Monday. This isn't a Tuesday release, it's a Monday release. We have very, very, very short notice, which in some ways is really quite cool, actually, because it means that we just kind of get to jump in on the content as soon as possible, and we will be going to the far Shiver Peaks, so it would seem. It's a further surprise to me, actually, as you guys remember, last week I mentioned on a video that it seems ArenaNet is sometimes rough as to whether they can actually get a patch out between Halloween and Winter's Day, and I was totally wrong about that. Not only are they doing that this year, but as many of you have pointed out, they've done it on several years in the past too, so it's just looking like it's pretty great all around, really. So earlier in the week, if you want to click the link on the screen right now, I did talk about the trailer that they released and do a big deep analysis on it. I've had a little bit more time to gel over it now and to think about some extra things. You guys have given me a lot of good feedback, which I want to go into today, as well as another article in particular that released around the time of the trailer. So I saw the trailer, I did my video on it, and about an hour or two after that, we did have another article release. I didn't get time to properly assess, talking about some other very cool stuff, including what looks like another new legendary for this patch. Oh, and boy, do I have a lot to say about that one. So first, let's just quickly go back to the trailer and catch up on some extra things. I mentioned, of course, quite prominently in one of the shots, we were seeing a statue of Jorah on the previous video. There's actually a little bit more we can say about this too. You'll notice, and I think people are right with their theories here, that around that time in the trailer when we're seeing the statue of Jorah, we're also seeing a little bit of the Grawl. There was a Grawl in the trailer. Curiously, it seemed to have been an allied Grawl, by the way. Very perceptive people noticed that this Grawl character in the trailer doesn't take cleave damage from the player character, which means that it is allied or something crazy like this. But the theory here is that actually that statue could be in a deep cave where we find a remote and isolated colony of Grawl worshipping it. So the Grawl as a peoples are not necessarily unified in Guild Wars 2. They break off into their own little tribes, their own little cults. They find things in the world that they then worship because they're very primitive. They don't have the capacity to understand very much, and so they find these statues and icons often left behind by lost civilizations. And I do believe this is an ancient old sculpture to Jorah left behind by old Norn, and then they sort of crowd around them. You should have noticed that very early on. If you have played early leveling content anytime recently, you'll recall that in the Plains of Ashford, a bunch of Grawl are doing something very similar to a statue of Balthazar. And so yeah, I actually think that they could all be worshipping Jorah. It could be like a cult around Jorah, and this could be a really nice way for ArenaNet to tap into some of that older lore and to express that to players without it having to be center stage to the story. I wouldn't even be surprised if there was some kind of daily heart here and it all revolved around helping these guys out. Maybe somewhat in the similar vein to the puritanical script we saw on Ember Bay. So, the other thing I mentioned about the Jorah statue as well, before we move on, is I suggested it was kind of weird that it was there because this statue technically had been created by Heir Sagalkin, and then it was weird that there was one up north as well, and were they going to do something with that? I actually think no. I think that, as many people have pointed out, they're just not going to talk about that because really this Jorah statue appears in multiple places in the game already. Before we even look at this idea of a new map in the far Shiver Peaks, there is, for example, an event to defend a Jorah statue that can be destroyed by Sons of Svanir in Wayfarer Foothills, and supposedly there's another one somewhere out in Holbrack too, as well as the one in Heir's Homestead. I think it's just sort of a generic model, and they put it in there, and we really don't have to think about that aspect of it. So good catch on that there, guys, as well. And yeah, I think that is really what we might be seeing. A nice subtle way to introduce us a little bit more into the old story of Drakkar and what could be going on there. Remember, this is called a crack in the ice, and well, what was under the ice in Guild Wars 1? Another thing about the trailer, I really have nothing to say on this, but I had quite a few comments about it, and it is cool. I missed it, because usually we go very slowly. I didn't on this one. There is a hidden chicken in the trailer. Not much more to say there, but there's a chicken somewhere in the far Shiver Peaks. Cool. People have also suggested another thing in the trailer too, before we move on here. that is quite an important topic. It really didn't strike me whatsoever, and I think it is kind of debatable what people are saying on this one. But if you'll look carefully, or maybe not even really that carefully, towards the end of the trailer, there are some very red-hewn environments. There does seem to be something going on here that could be to do with another fragment of the Bloodstone. So, quick recap for you all. You have the Bloodstone, the gods split it apart. As they split it apart, Ra Path 4 reveals that they infused it with even more magic from Zaitan to do this. Maybe they didn't require to, but they split it apart. They threw it into the caldera of the largest volcano on Tyria. That is on the Fire Island chain, not at Ember Bay, but it's nearby. And then the legends go that that volcano then later erupted, spreading these fragments all over the place. The truth might be different. It might not be that the volcano erupted. It could be that there was some kind of further magical explosion at some point, like what we saw almost happen at Bloodstone Fen, and that scattered these massive chunks everywhere. But you got 5 chunks, and they go all over the world. Throughout the franchise so far, we have only seen 3 of them, which leaves 2 as mystery chunks. I'm pretty sure it's 2 as mystery chunks. And ArenaNet could have those be anywhere in the entire game. And so the idea here might be, if you're seeing these red environments in this trailer, what if they suggest that one of them went to the far Shiver Peaks, and so that's going to key into the story here. Jormag is in that area because there's a Bloodstone shard in that area. This gives Lazarus a reason to want to maybe come to this area. Perhaps the White Mantle, who we've seen had pictures of Shiver Peak areas, are there as well. But I'm just not confident, guys. I know you're saying, oh, the red theme seems similar, but I don't know. Is that really Bloodstone-y stuff? And I kind of feel like I don't want one to be in the far Shiver Peaks. It just seems too random, and like there wasn't enough precedent. I want the other 2 to be like one in the region of Thunderhead and one in the region of the Isles of Janthir or something. Not just in the far Shiver Peaks, really close to where we were in Guild Wars 1 and somehow never saw or had any word of or any influence on Norn culture or anything like that. It just doesn't sit perfectly with me, but maybe it's a thing. Maybe, yes, there is a Bloodstone thing there and we'll get a bit more Lazarus. But honestly, I don't see a problem with the developers, with the writers, doing different stories in different patches. Maybe Lazarus doesn't have to appear in this patch, guys. Maybe the Bloodstone stuff doesn't have to appear in this patch. Christ, we haven't seen any of Bram or that lot so far yet, so maybe pick up some other stories, and then we'll see that a little bit later. Maybe those White Mantle pictures really were just around where their previous confessor died at Thunderhead Keep, and that's all. Maybe we'll get another update in the south. I do think, by the way, that there's a good chance now ArenaNet are going to take us back to the Fire Island chain. This is the early speculation. It's happening already. I think we could go back to this Fire Island chain after this patch and maybe start dealing with that volcano. And then we could go into the southern Shiver Peaks after that, because what you'll notice they're doing then is they're bouncing us back and forth. We're going fire, ice, fire, ice, fire, ice. Yeah, right? That could be something that we're seeing for this Living World season, and maybe we don't go very much back to the jungle at all. One of the big things they seriously need to do, though, is take us to the Pale Tree, but hey, I'm going a little bit off of scope here. So yeah, that's really all that there was in the trailer. There was one other thing. I mentioned at one point this idea of a human son of Svanir or something. Many people did then turn around and say to me, oh, WP, this could be a death-touched son of Svanir. This could be like a shadow son of Svanir. This could be Jormag taking on Zaitan's influence, just as we saw Shadow Touch Destroyers. That's a great idea, guys, but I kind of quite off the cuff just said, oh, it was a human thing. I knew that I recognized that asset. That asset isn't anything new. That is actually an asset you see originally in the Crucible of Eternity dungeon. There's a big Norn you might remember called Bjarl the Rampager in one of the paths. He's invulnerable unless he charges into a pillar and then he makes himself vulnerable again. That guy, that's that model. It's just a chance that they're reusing it. Maybe they'll do both and they're reusing Bjarl the Rampager and saying it's a death-touched son of Svanir or something. After all, the experiments in CUE were all about combining the powers of the multiple Elder Dragons together. My god, look at how ahead of his time Snaf was. But I don't know, it's definitely not something totally new, but it could be both. So there you go, that's the trailer. There is another little thing that's come out of the existence of that trailer just before we get to the second article, and it comes from this certainty people feel that we are now going to the far Shiver Peaks. All these talk about going north, as well as everything else I've pointed out. Well, If we look at the world map, but this time on that Shaman's historical map guide to Tyria, which overlays both Guild Wars 1 and Guild Wars 2 locations together, you might notice that there is something pretty interesting close by, and that is an area called the secret lair of the Snowman. Or the Snowmen, sorry. So what was this? I think a lot of Guild Wars 2 players really will have no idea what such a location might mean. Well, after Eye of the North came out, obviously back in the first game, ArenaNet did continue to update the festivals, both Halloween and Winter's Day. One of the biggest updates to Winter's Day that ever really happened for the first game was the introduction of a repeatable mini dungeon called the Secret Lair of the Snowmen. This was a dungeon you'd go into and you wouldn't be under normal builds, you wouldn't have your normal skills, your normal attributes, stuff like that. You'd be under snowball stuff. There would be tons of snowmen to fight, and the idea is that this is a little hollow where year long there are little snowmen that celebrate Winter's Day or prepare for Winter's Day. I believe the story was something along these lines. And now at Winter's Day, you could go in there and you could repeat it again and again and again. ArenaNet did a mini pet that would only drop on an incredibly low chance, such that thousands of people would do thousands of runs of the Secret Lair of the Snowmen mini dungeon and still not get it. This was the mini polar bear. It was a hyper prestige mini, and it was a big thing for Winter's Day in Guild Wars 1. A lot of people learned how to farm that incredibly fast, and so a lot of us still remember it, us veteran players from the first game. Well, fast forward 250 years, we're about to go to a map, guys, that essentially takes us geographically right over that secret lair. We're also going to that map, guess what, right before Winter's Day. So, I think it's fair to wonder, maybe if this map, maybe not right away when the patch comes in with a crack in the ice, but a little bit later, if we will actually revisit the secret lair of the Snowmen. Maybe there's an entrance there that opens up a bit, or maybe even further, you'll remember we can combo this with another earlier idea. The Lion's Arch Aerodrome had a new portal open up recently. As soon as that happened, people were suggesting there could be a festival-based raid. They thought it would be a Halloween festival raid. Well, I guess that's on the table again, right? Some people are actually thinking maybe this is like a short raid wing, difficult, challenging group content that you play through to do the secret lair of the Snowmen, but it's only Winter's Day bound for Guild Wars 2. I think it's totally possible. It's a very unique concept and not something we really have much precedent for. If it became a raid, you've got to consider that the raids are entered from the aerodromes, so does it really matter that we're geographically close in the story? I say yes. I say just because we enter them through an aerodrome, it doesn't mean they can't have like a ceremonial entrance. But if it's a festival raid specifically, that does mean some other things. If that came true, it would mean like that they've developed harder on Winter's Day than they have on Halloween. Maybe that's just because the timings didn't work out. It would mean, I doubt that this raid wing would properly progress legendary armor, because they wouldn't want to gate it off behind just a small window of time at a certain time of year. That is the only way you can get legendary armor. I can't ever see them doing that. Maybe it will just be a permanent raid that comes in to do with the secret lair of Snowman. Would we see the mini polar bear come back? I don't know. Maybe it will just be like a little soloable instance. The equivalent of Mad King's Ascent, right? Which Halloween already has, and they'll do that. So, fingers crossed ArenaNet have noticed that's there. There's always the chance they'll disappoint us and won't have done a damn thing. Alright, okay, so the last thing to talk about today is the Massively article, which released, as I said, just missed yesterday. This was very revealing. They had essentially one paragraph of text, but in it they had so much detail cram-packed, and from looking at their images, you can really extract quite a lot of information that the trailer doesn't give you whatsoever. So on my trailer video at the start, you will have noticed a couple of screenshots. Those I muxed in at the last second from the Massively article, long after I'd done all the recording, and they are some beautiful shots of the patch. We don't have to comment on every single one of them. This one specifically, though, makes my jaw drop. It's that forest again. Doesn't it look incredible? Oh, if this is a huge part of the map, this forest, it almost makes me feel bad saying in the trailer video it looks like they haven't made many new assets, because if there is a map defined by this aesthetic, yeah, that feels very different to anything that they have done before. Oh my god, it looks gorgeous. Can't wait to get in there. But the main screenshot that everyone's hyped over, or collection of screenshots I should say, are the ones showcasing this little guy. So this is an orca variety of Quaggan, and it would appear to be a new legendary. Now, everybody is just black and white exclaiming this as a legendary. They're saying it is a legendary. As far as I understand, there is no confirmation of that anywhere, so maybe hold your fingers crossed just in case it's not. But I'm pretty sure this thing is a legendary. If you've been majorly out of the loop, again, a very quick recap. Heart of Thorns was advertised and sold on the idea of releasing a full set of legendaries. In the end, only 4 came, and we thought that they'd been cancelled, but with last patch, Rising Flames, they finally gave us a new one, and that was the mace, and it was a pretty badass looking mace. So the idea might be that each patch we get a new legendary now. But specifically, I mean, look at the screenshot. It's got a lot of detail. It's a very distinct style to it, and most importantly, the dead giveaway, I think, are the footprints that come out in the background. They don't really do footsteps on non-legendary weapons. Also, if you're a bit of a detective, you could look at the actual page that they're hosting the image on, and massively has named the screenshots with the quaggan in it Shushadu. So that sounds like a very legendary kind of name, I'd say. By the way, you could go further than this. They actually uploaded more images of this than the article eventually linked to. And so these are 2 more images of Shushadu, the new presumed shield legendary that you can see here. One of them in particular looks really good. I got quite into keeping fish recently, and I do kind of like the fish tank aspect of the shield. I suppose another great strength that it's got is that it's a lot like Nevermore and Chukun Champawat, in that probably you're going to feel quite attached to the character that is the weapon at the same time, even though it doesn't have this nice long intricate collection process to get it and to bond with it. I'm sure we sort of eventually will in the end. It seems very legendary. All that said, though, I don't think I'm going to get this thing. There's been a bit of a discussion flaring up over it, and I'm in the grumpy camp. I really hope... Here's the idea, guys. People are saying, okay, if it was a serious legendary in the last set, they're probably going to make it a stupid legendary in this set. And if it was a stupid legendary in the last set, like the mace, they're probably going to make it a serious one in this set. Like, there has to be some kind of 50-50 balance. People are so sure of this idea that gives them even more reason to believe this is definitely a legendary. Listen, guys, that's not a good idea, all right? I actually said on a stream quite recently, people asked me, hey, what kind of legendary would you want them to release that you'd be most likely to go for? And I said the shield, because I said that you've got a lot of space to be very creative with the shield, and I've recently picked up a couple of classes that are using a bit more shield stuff, but there's no way I'm going to be getting this thing. I really hope we don't have a 50-50 split on stupid versus cool. The last shield was the Flameseeker Prophecies, which was very cool in terms of lore, but they had a lot of space to do more cool shields, didn't they? We didn't have to go stupid already. I really shudder to think that so many other weapons, like the new dagger, which I'm also very much waiting on, is also going to be stupid. But quaggan, they're a fan favorite. People like the cutesy stuff. Quaggan are probably going to be in the patch, as we've seen from the trailer. So I think a lot of us are pretty excited. It's just maybe not me. So that's the new legendary. That's one thing. The other thing that this article gave us, actually, came from the text as well as some of these screenshots. You will have noticed, it looks like there's some crate. And I know that the trailer suggested there was a little bit of underwater stuff, but not just any crate, but these look like toxic crate, don't they? In these screenshots, well, the body of text in the article does quite frankly, explicitly state, we're getting a new Fractal this patch. So this is going to be the Nightmare Fractal. Since the content drought ended and patches resumed, this is already the second entirely new Fractal that they're adding. I've said it time and time again, Fractals are an amazingly expandable and excellent concept for the game. I've been doing a lot of fractals recently, and with stuff like the infinite potions that they've added in, with some of the sinks for some of the decorations, I've actually found them to be one of the most rewarding areas of the game too, that I really quite enjoy lately. And so I am super excited to see a new fractal come in. I'm more excited about this fractal coming in than I was the Chaos Fractal coming in, because before the Chaos Fractal, I wasn't doing much of the content, and now I'm doing quite a lot. So what is it? It's the Nightmare Fractal. And this is, as it would seem, something to do, and then basically they say in the body of text, I'll just read out what they say here. They say, this 5-person instanced dungeon takes players on an upward climb through a massive tower, which is heavily guarded by powerful abominations and their toxic experiments. So, what could that mean? I wonder. Well, I'll try and dig up some old footage from my channel if I can find any for you all. This looks like a retelling, a remake, a fractal version of the Tower of Nightmares. What was the Tower of Nightmares? This was a chapter back during Living World Season 1, back when pretty much everything the devs did, they then later removed from the game. If you go to Kessex Hills these days, you'll see all these ruins around one of the lakes. That's where the Tower of Nightmares once upon a time was. It was this thing that was structured to be very difficult, multiple floors you could climb once per day, and if you got to the top, you'd get like a tri-key, then you could open a special chest. It was really designed for open worldy type stuff. It was its own instance. It was very cool, but obviously wouldn't work perfectly as a fractal, so I am guessing they've reimagined this thing, implemented it as fractals. Someone in the Reddit comments pointed out that they think this could even be something to do with the boss fractals. So we currently have Mytrin, the Jade Moor, the Molten Duo. I think those are the three bosses, and presumably this fractal would see us climb it and end with a big boss, so it's got space for maybe even taking that slot. And I think that's all pretty exciting too. So I'm really curious to see what they do there. More fractal revamps as well would be great. Fractals are one of those things, honestly, that was so bad at the release of Heart of Thorns. So bad. But have genuinely had enough updates now to really start pulling themselves out of the woodworks. Every patch has relentlessly done something. We've had revamps to Swamp. We've had revamps to Snowblind. We've had revamps to Cliffside. And slowly but surely they are making things better. They are adding the new fractals in, which is what that game type should always have thrived on. I am really happy to hear that they're doing this, and I can't wait to get into the nitty-gritty and the specifics on exactly what's going on. My only fear with this is to do with Living World Season 1, and it's something I don't think not enough people are talking about. So this is not the first time we've seen a fractal go in that is based on Living World Season 1 content. Some other Living World Season content included another dungeon, which was the Molten Facility, and that became 2 fractals. And we also saw the Aetherblade secret hideout in Lion's Arch become 2 fractals too. So now we're seeing even more Living World Season 1 content become a fractal. And that's all well and good if this stuff's being reimagined and it's obviously not fully seated in the old narrative and stuff. But I'm really worried that every time they do this, they're like chinking away at the armor of the community stance that we need Living World Season 1 back. What I'm worried is going to happen is that they do this so much, eventually people are like, oh, we don't need Living World Season 1. All the cool Living World Season content is there in fractals. Like, imagine a day where all the other stuff's there, like the Karka attack and the first run through South Sun and the Breachmaker fights and the evacuating people from Lion's Arch and all that good stuff, the Jubilee stuff. Imagine a world where all of that's become fractals. All of a sudden, it's going to seem like we don't need Living World Season 1 to be formally dropped in the game anymore, and I will really be disappointed with that. I will really be disappointed to have to fight other people in the community to get that in the game, because the truth is, guys, even if this stuff does get dropped in through fractals, it is still not good enough. The way that the game is currently structured, Heart of Thorns leans really heavily on the characters that were introduced in Living World Season 1. And what we're having right now is new people come into the franchise on sales like we've got at the moment. They'll finish the Persil, if they finish the Persil story, which is a shoddy end in and of itself, and then they look, oh, Living World Season 2, or do I really want to get into this? And then they just have a sudden jarring jolt entrance. The little cutscene that Ella McKay gives you in Lion's Arch that isn't even properly directed to is not enough. We need Season 1, and I'm really scared, as I say, that over time, because of fractals, people are going to think we don't, and I just don't think I'm going to budge on that stance. Maybe, but we'll see. Well, so there you go, guys. That's the extra details that I never managed to get out on the previous trailer analysis video. Thanks very much for watching. If you still feel like I'm missing something, do get your comments in, get your theories in. I'm hoping to get at least one more video out before the patch, at least on this, in which I talk about some more lore speculation stuff cooling down off of Rising Flames. That was a deliberate pun. And we'll see what we can talk about there. So if you've got some cool theories, let me know, and hopefully I'll try to infuse as much of the badass stuff as I can into the video. Thanks very much for watching, guys. I hope you all enjoyed. Have a great evening. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time. The dragon's dead, and that's it.
definitely not satisfying for me, even as living world updates, let alone for an expansion. This was so little, I find it really hard to be excited that this plot's going anywhere soon over the next many years, because the expansions apparently have nothing to do with the rest of the story. Ouch. So why did this happen? I think ArenaNet pushed themselves in a corner in a lot of ways. They have now set such a high bar for telling story, they really can't tell very much. And where in previous games or other games, they would have had systems like traditional questing to pad out the story and deliver a lot more of that information, they really don't have that in this release. There aren't many maps, there isn't much opportunity for dynamic events. Dynamic events themselves are limited in their capacity to tell decent story. We got a little bit of stuff on the druids only through those dynamic